Hey everyone! Mistfall Hunter is finally here, and look, I've already lost way too much precious loot in this fog to stay quiet. This is a brutal PvPvE extraction ARPG. If you die, you lose everything you collected, and the only way to get back to camp with your reward is by fighting until the end. So today, I've put together 10 advanced tips that I learned the hard way. If you're tired of extracting empty-handed or getting third-partied at the end of a fight you had already won, this video is for you. I'm Matthew, and let's dive right in. In Mistfall Hunter, hitting the head isn't just a nice combat detail. It's a real way to massively increase your damage and shorten fights that could otherwise turn into a long and dangerous exchange. And the most interesting part is that this doesn't only apply to ranged attacks. In melee, your camera position also affects the trajectory of your swing, so you start playing with more intention and less on autopilot. What I like about this mechanic is that it rewards an attentive player. It's not enough to just spam attack and rely on the raw damage of your weapon, because here, positioning truly makes a difference. When you understand that the camera can alter the angle of your slash or your charge, combat gains a much more technical layer. In practice, this separates those who are just surviving from those who are truly controlling the fight. And this gets even stronger when you think about the Black Arrow class, because headshots are already an absurd threat on their own. But the trick is realizing that this weak point logic doesn't just belong to archers. If you enter a melee exchange already aiming for the opponent's head, you speed up the finish and reduce the time they have to react, heal, or call for help. To me, this is exactly the kind of mechanic that makes Mistfall Hunter deeper than it seems at first glance. It's not a game where you win just by having a good build. You win because you read combat better, adjust your camera better, and understand where the game truly rewards precision. And honestly, when you start hitting those headshots at the right timing, it feels amazing. It feels like the game finally clicked in your hand. In the beginning, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking your focus should only be grabbing strong gear and raising your character's immediate power. But the truth is that what truly builds your real strength is account and camp progression. When you understand this, you stop spending as if every run were an isolated life, and start thinking like someone who wants to get permanently strong. And honestly, I really like this type of progression because it gives real weight to every resource you gather. Instead of blowing everything on temporary equipment that might disappear on the next lost extraction, it makes much more sense to save Gildan blood and invest in camp upgrades, facilities, and permanent bonuses. This makes every decision more strategic because you start thinking about what will benefit you across all classes, not just in that specific match. The smartest point of this mechanic is that it rewards patience. Some extraction games push you toward quick consumption, trapping you in that cycle of loot and loss without building anything solid. But Mistfall Hunter seems to want you to build a strong base before you go buying disposable power. And this drastically changes the player's mindset, because progress stops being just how much I looted today and turns into how much I strengthen my future. To me, this is the tip that best separates those playing on impulse from those who truly understand the game. If you respect permanent progression, the camp becomes your true center of power, and every run starts serving a purpose greater than just surviving that moment. At the end of the day, strong gear impresses, but permanent upgrades are what keep you coming back better prepared. The Scavenger squad works as a sort of passive income within Mistfall Hunter, and I think that's brilliant because it takes a bit of the pressure off that if I lose the next run, I'm screwed mindset. When you keep this team constantly active, the game starts giving you a steady return of resources, even when you aren't coming back with an absurd haul from the fog. The most interesting part is that this adds a layer of stability to progression. In extraction games, it's very common to go through bad streaks, die a few times, and feel like everything's stalled, but this system helps cushion those exact types of drops. To me, this is one of the smartest mechanics in the game because it rewards consistency, not just pure skill or extraction luck. Instead of relying only on what you manage to personally bring back from each match, you start thinking of your camp as a living structure that works in your favor all the time. Upgrading the Scavenger squad and always sending them out on missions is almost like setting up a silent safety net, the kind whose value you only realize once you've taken enough beatings to understand. If you leave the Scavenger squad sitting idle, you are wasting one of the safest ways to keep your material flow healthy. And honestly, in a game where dying can cost you dearly, having a passive source that keeps generating value while you prep for the next run is simply gold. Each class having two stances completely changes the rhythm of combat. Because you aren't just choosing a weapon, you're choosing two ways of approaching the fight. And for me, that's exactly what makes the game more interesting. You don't win just by reacting fast, but by knowing when to change the plan under pressure. What I find smartest here is how the game rewards those who understand role and timing. One stance might be perfect for crowd control, stopping an advance, or creating space, while the other steps in to deal raw damage and end the trade. When you learn to switch between the two at the right moment, combat stops feeling like a single attack button and turns into a tactical dance, almost like setting a trap in real time. And this is the kind of thing that clearly separates an advanced player from an average one. Anyone stuck in a single stance is usually leaving efficiency on the table, because they end up using control tools when they should be bursting damage, or trying to force damage when they still needed to prep the ground. Real-time switching is precisely what allows you to build a cleaner, more aggressive, and far more dangerous rotation for whoever is on the receiving end. To me, this mechanic is one of the best ideas in the game because it gives each class more depth without complicating things needlessly. You feel like you're always making active choices, rather than just repeating an automatic combat pattern. In the end, mastering both stances isn't just an advantage, it's almost the heart of the system, because those who learn to switch well fight with much more confidence and efficiency. This tip is gold, because it changes how you think about ranged combat. Instead of using your skills only to hit the enemy directly, you start treating the floor as part of your weapon, creating space and controlling the movement of anyone coming after you. This makes the Black Arrow, and similar classes, much more dangerous than it seems at first glance. What I love about this mechanic is that it turns pressure into a trap. When an aggressive enemy starts chasing you, you don't need to panic and just back away mindlessly. You can literally ruin their path, force hesitation, and buy yourself a few precious seconds to reposition. And in a game like Mistfall Hunter, a few seconds can be the difference between extracting with loot or losing everything to the fog. To me, this type of tool is what separates an ordinary shooter from a truly smart player. Because it's not just about damage, it's about space control, route reading, and knowing exactly where the other guy wants to step. When you learn to chuck traps on the floor the right way, combat becomes much more psychological, because the opponent starts fighting the map as well. And that is deeply satisfying, honestly, because you feel like you're dictating the pace of the fight, even without being glued to your target. Instead of running just to survive, you use the environment and your skills to create a danger zone around you. It's one of those techniques that look simple, but when they click, they make you play with way more confidence and far more control. In this game, the real fight starts long before you step foot in the dungeon. I really like this kind of system because it rewards preparation in a smart way. You don't just show up with a good weapon, you enter with a plan. When your camp is optimized with the right gems, runes, and bonuses, you already arrive in the match with an advantage that a lot of people don't even realize they're missing. The strongest point here is the victory wine, because it shows the game wants you to think about thresholds and synergies, not just raw attack numbers. This is super cool to me, because it turns preparation into a part of combat rather than a boring detail outside the action. If you know your build needs a specific push to close a perfect block, reach an attribute breakpoint, or activate an important interaction, then consuming the right tonic before a run becomes practically mandatory. And honestly, this is what separates an improvised player from someone truly playing at a high level. When you stack affixes, adjust your gems, and enter only after setting up the right structure at camp, you reduce your margin for error and make your character actually work. It's not about entering the dungeon hoping everything goes right. It's about entering with your kit built to win even before the first strike. To me, this is one of the most satisfying parts of this type of extraction ARPG, because the game makes it clear that performance comes from preparation. There's something great about building your character outside of combat and feeling that translate into a real in-game advantage. In the end, anyone who ignores the camp is playing half the game, and in Mistfall Hunter that can cost you the entire run. A lot of people treat each class as isolated progression, but when you understand that the game shares armor between certain classes, everything changes. For me, that was a "why didn't I think of this sooner" moment, because you stop wasting resources and start building an arsenal that works for more than one character. The most important detail is the shared warehouse. This, combined with compatible armor types, completely transforms how you handle loot. Instead of discarding or selling a piece of gear just because it doesn't fit your current class, you start thinking, this might be perfect for another build later. And then the game becomes much more about planning than immediate consumption. I really like this mechanic because it rewards long-term thinkers. Saving good attribute rolls stops being a luxury and turns into pure strategy, especially if you like testing different classes. When you switch classes using Do, you can already have a practically ready set waiting for you, and that drastically speeds up your adaptation and evolution without needing to farm everything from scratch. This is the kind of knowledge that avoids that classic beginner mistake, spending everything on a single character and then suffering when you decide to switch. Mistfall Hunter clearly encourages flexibility, and those who understand this armor-sharing play with much greater efficiency. You aren't just gearing one character, you're building a solid foundation for any playstyle you want. Using block just to defend yourself is the basics, but when you start using it as a bait tool, everything changes. In builds like the Mercenaries 100% block, you aren't just tanking damage, you're inviting the enemy to make a mistake. What I find most interesting is how this creates real punishment windows. You absorb the first impact, trigger talents like Resilient Body or Rising to the Challenge, and turn defense into an immediate counterattack. Often the enemy thinks they're initiating a favorable trade, but in practice they just completely exposed themselves, got stunned, and became an easy target. And that's where the highest level of play comes in. Playing in a team or thinking 2 steps ahead. While you hold and break the opponent's rhythm, you make space for someone in the backline, like a sorcerer, to simply wipe the guy off the map. Even solo, this still works as an absurd form of control, because you dictate when the fight actually begins. It's not just reacting to combat, it's manipulating the other guy's decision. When you start using your block as bait, you stop being predictable and start controlling the flow of the fight. And in Mistfall Hunter, controlling the flow almost always means making it out alive, with the loot. If there's one thing Mistfall Hunter makes crystal clear after a few serious runs, it's that stamina isn't just any random resource. It's literally what separates you from making it out alive or becoming someone else's loot. Almost everything relevant you do depends on it. Skills, movement, combat pressure. And the most common mistake here is playing like it's a traditional ARPG, spamming abilities and dodges without thinking about the aftermath. The problem is that when you break your stamina loop, the game punishes you in a silent but brutal way. It's not that direct punishment with a permanent negative status, but rather that stuck, slow, unresponsive feeling. And in an extraction game, that kind of vulnerability is unforgiving, because it's not just the mob that can catch you, it's another player who is just waiting for you to overcommit. Even with recent changes, like the removal of the exhausted state and dodges becoming charge-based, stamina management remains essential. In practice, it got mechanically less punishing, but no less strategic. Now the game gives you a slightly bigger margin for error, but if you play on autopilot, you'll still put yourself in bad situations. Stamina remains the rhythm of the fight. And to me, the most valuable tip here is simple. Always save a dodge to get out of the brawl. Don't just think about engaging or winning a trade. Think about how you're going to get out if things go south. This mindset completely changes your survival in the game. Because at the end of the day, in Mistfall Hunter, the winner isn't the one who deals the most damage. It's the one who knows when it's time to no longer be there. If there's one mistake many people make, it's treating the extraction point as a safe finish line, when in reality it's the most dangerous place on the map. Once you kill the returner woodling and ring the bell, you basically light up a beacon saying, "There's loot here." And that is precisely where gatekeeping comes into play. Other players waiting for the exact moment to wipe you out and take everything. Playing solo, this becomes even more critical. Running straight to the portal the second it opens is practically asking to walk into an ambush. Organized trios love this timing, because they know you'll be focused on getting out, not on fighting. So the pace changes completely. It's not about haste, it's about control. Reaching the point first doesn't mean you're safe, it just means you've become the most predictable target in the match. The safest way to handle this is to treat the extraction like an active enemy area. Use stealth whenever possible, crouch walk so you don't give away your position, and start sweeping the area before committing. Throwing utility items into the area isn't a waste, it's an investment in information. Sometimes, just forcing someone to move gives you the exact advantage you needed to decide whether to push or fall back. To me, the turning point is understanding that extracting isn't a moment, it's a process. You don't arrive and leave, you conquer the exit. And often, the best decision isn't entering the portal at the first opportunity, but waiting, repositioning, or even abandoning that point if it looks compromised. Because in the end, surviving in Mistfall Hunter isn't about who got there first, it's about who didn't fall for the game's most obvious trap.